The LGBT civil rights movement. In the 1940s, homosexuality is considered to be a mental illness. An author by the name of Alfred Kinsey publishes a book called Sexual Behavior in the Human Male. In the 1950s, Henry Hay founds the Mattachine Society, the first national gay rights organization. In an attempt to change public perception of homosexuality, the Mattachine Society aims to eliminate discrimination, derision, prejudice, and bigotry. The Senate report titled Employment of Homosexuals and Other Sex Perverts in Government is released, and it claims that homosexuals pose a safety risk and should not have government jobs. This report led to the Lavender Scare, which is when more than 4,380 gay men and women were discharged from the military due to their sexual orientation. Also, about 500 gay Americans lost their jobs. The Lavender Scare also paralleled McCarthyism, which was the fear of communism in the 50s. In 1953, President Dwight Eisenhower signs Executive Order 10450, which classifies homosexuals as safety risks and bans them from jobs with the federal government. In 1955, the Daughters of Bilitis were created, which was the first lesbian rights organization. In the early 1960s, Illinois becomes the first state to decriminalize homosexuality. In 1966, the Mattachine Society holds a sit-in, which is when members announce their sexuality at a bar and then are refused service. Following this, the New York City Commission of Human Rights declares that homosexuals have the right to be served in restaurants and bars. Also during this year, the National Transsexual Counseling Unit opens. In the early 70s, the American Psychiatric Association removed homosexuality from its list of mental illnesses. Later on that decade, 75,000 people participated in the March on Washington and protested for gay and lesbian rights. In the 1980s, gay-related immune deficiency disorder is found in 41 gay men. After symptoms are found outside of the gay community, however, the disease is renamed from GRID to AIDS. In 1987, hundreds of thousands of activists participated in the annual March on Washington to urge President Reagan to address the AIDS crisis going on in America. However, over 20,000 Americans had already died from the disease before Reagan even acknowledged the epidemic. Ryan White was a teenager in Indiana in the 80s who contracted AIDS while receiving a treatment for hemophilia. Because of this, he couldn't attend school. He later became an activist for AIDS research and anti-discrimination. This led to the passage of the Ryan White CARE Act, a federally funded program to help people living with AIDS. In the 1990s, the U.S. military adopted a Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. This meant that applicants could not be denied service due to their sexual orientation. The Defense of Marriage Act defines marriage as a legal union between a man and a woman, and that no state is allowed to recognize a same-sex marriage. The widow of Martin Luther King Jr., Coretta Scott King, compares the African American civil rights movement to the gay civil rights movement. Because of this, she receives a lot of criticism from the black community. In 2004, Massachusetts becomes the first state to legalize gay marriage, claiming that the prohibition of gay marriage is unconstitutional because it denies equality and dignity of all individuals. Later, New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, Iowa, and Washington, D.C. legalized gay marriage. In 2008, Californians approved Proposition 8, which makes same-sex illegal in California. This inspires the No Hate campaign, which uses celebrities to promote marriage equality. In 2011, President Obama says his administration will no longer recognize the Defense of Marriage Act, which bans same-sex marriage. On June 26, 2015, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that denying gay couples the right to marry was unconstitutional and that gay marriage will now be legal in all 50 states. Unlike previous decades, workers cannot be persecuted for openly declaring their sexual orientation. This is defended by the First Amendment. Title VII is the federal employment non-discrimination law. It forbids discrimination based on sex. Some people also interpret this law to defend discrimination based on sexual identity. There are still some alarming statistics about discrimination in the LGBT community. 1 out of every 25 complaints about workplace discrimination comes from LGBT employees. Also, in 31 states, it still remains legal to fire an employee based on their sexual orientation. up to 41% of LGBT employees say that they've experienced verbal or physical abuse from their coworkers. How can we get rid of these statistics? Well, it starts with you. Ignorance is passed down by generations, so encourage acceptance and open-mindedness in your children.